the story comes full circle. So I'm doing these mystical Christian rituals up on the top of Machu Picchu, which of course is a sacrilegious thing to think that there was Christian rituals going on at the top of Machu Picchu. And I realized, of course, that the main altar that I was doing this on, no one would have ever known that this is what happened there. And so no one would have ever known this had happened there. And there were these two other altars that I have the sense were being used by the men who were there, the warriors, and by the women. And I was doing these rituals because somehow I was very powerful there, so I could get an altar to myself because I was the son of this man who was this warrior king. And then I came to the realization, somehow or other, I don't have the whole story here, but somehow or other I began to come to the realization that the Spanish were using me. And that it's not that we were going to be able to collaborate in some way, but they were just using me. And they were using me to infiltrate this Incan world and then to use us for our gold and turn us into slaves. And of course, then I got very upset about this sense of betrayal, and I'm very upset at myself for having betrayed what was really a sacred trust of my own people. And I then somehow called together all of these warriors, and we were the ones who went off to go after the Spanish, which none of which I knew any of this history. But all of this became clear as I was going through this. And then in the end, I know what happened, and I know I had this horrendous death because the people left me and I was caught and I was killed, and in a really gruesome way. And so the story came full circle, and I now understood what was happening. And not only that, what I didn't know was there was a man who was called Tupac Amaru, who also had a child, but he was called the Lost Incan. And there were two Tupac Amarus, and I was the first of those two Tupac Amarus, and that was theoretically, Tupac Amaru did have the history that I was revealed to me. I just didn't know it, but it made an incredible amount of sense about my own life and my sense of longing for something I didn't have desperately, and even when I had it, not feeling like I had it. And it led me to saying, I wouldn't be able to keep a tradition, and it led me to saying I had to live my own life in my own way, and it led me to not keeping things that were truly sacred. All of these things became revealed in this story in ways that I came back to realize I'd been living out echoes of. And then, of course, the death, and then the realization of what had happened to me, and that I had never been able to handle the betrayal and the death, and that I had been working through the whole thing. And something began to shift in my life around all those themes after this story. So it was really quite something for me. But perhaps what was most amazing was we had a guide, and I shared with him what I discovered. And he was an extraordinary guide throughout all of Peru, and particularly at Machu Picchu for us. And when I told him this story, he turned a little bit ghostly, or as they say, a whiter shade of pale, except he wasn't pale, of course. And he said, I'm going to tell you something. He said, several years ago, I went and I was leading around a group of Christian bishops through Machu Picchu. And I brought them to Machu Picchu. And one of them, who was clearly truly mystical, said, what you've told us is that there are these three altars up there, and that one of them, the big one, was for the people, and then there were the two other ones were for the women and for the men. But I want to tell you, the one that you told us for the people, I want you to know that there was some kind of Christian mystical rituals that were going on here. And that, of course, no one knew that at the time. And so I told him the story, and he said, no one has ever said that to me. I'm actually writing a book about this, which, of course, he's had a lot of difficulty even thinking about writing, because it would be sacrilege to say that what was going on in Machu Picchu actually was Christian rituals and mystical Christian rituals. But what he told me of what this bishop said and what I knew from my own subjective firsthand experience lined up. And it really opened me, and it's making me feel goosebumps right now, even though this story happened probably 15 years ago. I can still remember it like it was yesterday, and it really did set me on a new path around really honoring what was sacred and honoring what was truly important, and not being pulled by things that were of lesser importance or connections people offer that seemed compelling but perhaps were not truly real gold but fool's gold. So my commitment now is to real gold and to honoring the sacred in every way possible.